Okay, great. So, hello everyone, and welcome to session 18 of World Futures Day. Time flies. We're almost near the end of World Futures Day, but we have many more sessions left. I'm Amna from here. We are a global nonprofit working to include futures literacy in the school curriculum, and we are live on YouTube right now. This session is hosted by Teach the Future and Young Voices Network in partnership with the Millennium Project. World Futures Day is a 24-hour long intergenerational conversation about the future and a space for young people and futurists to be involved in anticipating and influencing the future, both in and out of school. Today, well, for the hour, I have two amazing facilitators joining to talk about the future of work in space. So we're going out in space. I have Nicole, who is a 25-year-old trailblazer from the Systems Analysis and Concepts Directorate at NASA. Nicole serves as a vital member of the Mars architecture team in the role of Crew Support Systems Deputy. Her mission involves shaping the future of human habitation and workspaces for the journey to Mars and life on the Martian surface. And along Nicole, we have Randi, who is the co-founder of Business Model Youth and the architect behind Learner to Earner, a youth-focused career education organization that partners with schools and organizations worldwide. Learner to Earner helps students translate their visions for life beyond school into immediate actions using an iterative method, systems and entrepreneurial concepts, and systems thinking too. This is an interview, and I will, without any further ado, hand it over to Nicole and Randy to take the stage.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yep. Hello, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to see so many people gathered here today for World Futures Day. I am immensely excited to be a part of this amazing event. And I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Nicole, not only for her valuable participation, but also for graciously hosting from her location at NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. We have an exciting agenda lined up for you, divided into three captivating segments. First, we'll delve into an illuminating interview with Nicole, exploring her groundbreaking work at NASA. A conversation you won't want to miss. Following that, from learner to earner, I'll introduce you to a practical systems thinking tool designed to enhance your ability to apply futures thinking to career exploration, planning, and putting your ideas about work and life into action. And finally, we'll wrap up with a dynamic question and answer session with Nicole and myself. We ask that you put your questions in the chat because we'll be doing the interview and make sure that we can get all the questions answered. And I encourage you to actively participate, again, by using the chat. So let's get started. Nicole, let's understand how you got where you are at NASA. Can you give us an overview of your educational and career history up to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I trust you'll tell me if you can't. So my name is Nicole, and I work at NASA Langley Research Center now. Hopefully you don't mind that the windows are in my glasses. But I grew up in Michigan. So I went to all of my grade schools through there, high school there, and then I started college at the University of Michigan Dearborn. So kind of starting in high school, I had a couple jobs, just kind of like your typical high school jobs. I worked at a number of restaurants and also team sports and things like that. And then in college, I started, and the day that I went to my first orientation, I changed my major from undecided to something engineering so that I could take engineering classes and kind of see what that would be like. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I decided that I wanted to do something that I was passionate about, and I just kind of let that kind of drive my path forward. So I switched to engineering, and then during kind of my first 2 years, just spent a lot of time kind of seeing what was out there, hearing what people around me were doing, people older than me were doing. And I, at a certain point, decided that I wanted to be pre-med. So I was like, that sounds like a clear path that I can follow. So I was pre-med for a while, and then I learned about the concept of flight surgeons, which are doctors for the astronauts, kind of before they go to space, while they're in space, and after they come back, seeing how they change. And I was like, well, that sounds way cooler than being a doctor on Earth. So that kind of started my interest in NASA. And I just started applying to, they have like a really robust internship program that has a lot of opportunities kind of all across the US. So I applied to that the first time and I didn't get it. I didn't get any of my internships that summer. I think I applied to like 14. So pro tip, keep going. So I applied to all those and then I just kept my application in there for the semesters to follow. And then the second semester that I applied, I ended up getting it. And then that was the first time that I was ever at NASA Langley Research Center. Quite honestly, the first time I ever kind of really knew the difference between all the NASA centers. There's a number of them all spread out, but I'm in Virginia now. So I actually ended up interning here for 4 semesters, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I do in the later questions that are coming. And then from there, I ended up going to work at NASA Johnson Space Center, which is in Texas. There, I got to do more like hands-on engineering, which is something I didn't get to do before. So I wanted to kind of have that experience to decide which path I wanted to go forward with. And then I went back to school at the University of Michigan, graduated with my degree in biomedical engineering in 2022. And then I've been here at NASA Langley Research Center full-time since then.
Obviously an extensive pathway so far. Can you give us an overview of what your typical day looks like?
Yeah, so now I'm split on 2 projects. So the project that I started interning with was called supportability. So supportability is, by nature of the word, it's the ability to support. So we look at for future human exploration missions in particular, so when we're sending people into space, how do we support them? Which is typically looking at kind of the logistics that they need. So how much like water, how much air, and the systems that are able to generate those things, or if we just bring them with us in tanks and stuff like that. But that can also translate to taking care of the systems themselves. So if you think about if you were to drive your car to somewhere far away, you'd probably have a spare tire in case your tire popped. I kind of look at how we do that for missions like Mars. And potentially how many spare tires you need if you're going on, say, a 3-year road trip instead of just something that's going like an hour away. And on the other side of my time, I do what's called the Mars Architecture Team. So that's looking at how we can make sustained human Mars exploration possible, and how we can get humans to Mars. So specifically, I work on kind of like the human side of that. So how do we make sure the humans that we're sending are happy and healthy? So that's I'm in a lot of meetings, working with a lot of people, not necessarily in Virginia, but kind of across a number of NASA centers working together to try and figure out how best to do this. I'm sending a lot of emails. I work in the space mission analysis branch. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is analysis based. So I'm not necessarily building any hardware. Everything that I can do can be done on my computer. But it's the analysis of different options, kind of looking at if I change one thing, how does this change other things, so that people can be as informed as possible when we're looking at all the different ways in which we can do something.
So I have one clarifying question. The word architecture might be unclear and might be different for others. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'd say like the typical use of the word is when like we're like building houses or something, right? When we talk about space architecture, that's kind of like how do you build a robust mission or series of missions to kind of meet an overall goals and objectives. So not just like what does one mission to Mars look like, but what is like our vision for what we see on Mars looking like, and what are all the little micro decisions that we need to make to enable that.
So what is challenging about your day-to-day?
Gosh, I would say that for something like how we go to Mars, there's a lot of ways we can do it. There's so many small things. So like consider like the number of crew, for example. people need a lot of stuff when you send them to space. People need even more stuff when they're going to be in space for a Mars mission that's like 2 to 3 years. So if you change how many people you want to take, then maybe you need to consider like that it's going to weigh more, and you might want to go faster so that people are in space for less time, because that has its own health effects. But if you go faster, then it takes kind of more propellant, or like to the car example, more gas to get to where you want to go. So one of the challenges is just kind of there's so many options, and there's so many different like combinations of all these different ways you can do a Mars mission. So trying to figure out kind of what are the potential ways of being able to kind of like whittle down from there.
So that takes us right into our definition and application. How would you define futures thinking, given this idea that there are many different ways to get to where you're going, and obviously many different resources that you might need to bring together? How do you define futures thinking?
Yeah, so one thing that NASA has done right now, that's kind of like futures thinking in that way, is they've developed the Moon to Mars objectives, which is like publicly available in case anybody wants to look into it. It's like 63 objectives for how NASA wants to go to the moon and onto Mars. So from that like future perspective, we're thinking about what are the high level objectives, what are the things that are recurring across these objectives that we want to make sure we do for Mars. And then working kind of backwards from that, how can we use the moon to serve as like a great test bed, but also closer to home, to be able to learn things and then be able to go forth onto Mars. So kind of like using those objectives to guide from kind of that end state back down to what we're doing today.
So that goes right into our impact on decision making. So in what ways does the future thinking influence your decision, given the process that you just highlighted?
Yeah, so I'd say, just for context of what I do, so my role is to be a systems analyst, which is typically providing information to decision makers. So like me as an entity is not a decision maker. But I'd say like that's the purpose of NASA developing the like goals and objectives, is so that we have something that we're kind of striving towards. And then me as an analyst can be able to provide like, okay, this option is good in these ways, but bad in these ways. And this option might be better in the other ways. Kind of like to develop those pros and cons with kind of the math that goes behind it and the engineering, so that someone else can make those decisions as informed as possible to enable us to meet those objectives.
So again, we're right on track, because now we're going to talk about collaboration and innovation. How do you use futures thinking when you're integrating with teams or your coworkers?
Yeah, so like I talked about a little bit before, like my team is definitely not the people that I see in the office every day. I think like a lot of people have gotten more used to that, like post-pandemic. Working virtually. But I guess even before that, a lot of our team dynamics were very much so hybrid, because a number of the people that we're working with are working at kind of a number of NASA centers across the US. So from time to time, we get to go visit them, but for the most part, it's some type of hybrid meeting where sometimes there's people around me and sometimes there's people that are far. But kind of like I said, a lot of the work that we do is at such a high level, that like something like going to Mars, like think about everything that you need on Earth here today. Well, we need the same things, we just need them in space. So it's very cross-disciplinary in that way. And like we need a lot of different opinions from a lot of different people and a lot of their system expertise in a certain area, so that we can be as informed as possible to understand like all the potential pros and cons of changing any one variable or any combination of variables. So I think just in general, like collaboration and innovation are something that like we need and do and need kind of like the diverse teams in order to enable us to get to the goals we've set.
So that leads right into strategic forecasting. I know you said quite a bit about strategic forecasting so far. Can you add anything further in terms of how you employ futures thinking into strategic thinking?
Yeah, I just say I guess for context, for like where one of my teams sit organizationally, I'm within the strategy and architecture office. So like as a portion of like NASA and how we do human or how we do exploration in general, um, is that like there is a part that is like kind of like the implementation side, but there also is the part that is that strategy side. So that's what like we're working on, the things that are like farther away where people aren't necessarily building all the hardware yet, to kind of like look at it at that very high level, at that strategic level for what we want to do in the future, so that we're kind of preemptively planning. And then as those things get closer, then those start rolling into things that are more near term, the hardware starts happening, so on and so forth.
So of course, space travel does come with some risk. What kinds of things do you do with risk management and innovation for futures thinking?
Yeah, so one thing that I would say, like, it's kind of like on theme, that's kind of like exactly what we do as systems analysts, is to try and understand kind of like the risk versus reward of any one option. So just to kind of continuously be informed about like what is the benefit of doing something, and then what is the associated risk or cost or whatever that may be of the other thing. But also being able to look at kind of what we call like sensitivity analysis, to see how if you can improve something in one area, like by how much improvement can you kind of start to buy down that risk. So like for example, like can you like help yourself out by doing testing or something of that sort. Kind of falls into like what I do for supportability, to be able to show like what's like, if you could test something for 1 year, like what's the best year that you could spend to kind of start to like bring down the like risk that we know today. So just kind of always considering those things and knowing that like in general, there's like, we call it like the three-legged stool metaphor. There's a three-legged stool where it's like cost, schedule, and risk. So like always just being cognizant that in like something as complex as a human spaceflight system, let alone anything else, I think this just happens in normal industry too. But all those things are kind of a balance. And typically when you give one, or one gets better, one gets worse, it's just kind of offloading in those other areas. So just kind of being consistently aware of the push and pull.
So the final question that I'm going to ask you for your interview, I'm actually going to put up I'm going to share my screen as she's speaking to it. Because two things are going to happen after I ask this question. There are going to be some photos that are of Nicole over her time as an intern at U of M, as well as some other work that she did as an internship, and some photos that she is doing in the present. So I don't want you to be caught off guard as I do that. So my final question to you, Nicole, can you speak to the training and development? Could you discuss how future thinking is integrated into your training and skill development? And one other question is, how does preparing for future challenges and scenarios challenge your skills and development in future thinking for your next role or your current role, or however you want to define it?
Yeah. So I'd say when it comes to kind of skills and training, I don't know if it's fair to say that I feel like that's kind of like a default mindset when you're thinking about kind of what trainings you want to do. It's typically what things you might not be as good at today that you want to be better at in the future. So kind of being proactive about what things you want to get better at, and essentially like what kind of version of yourself you want to be in the future by doing those things. And kind of same thing with like any specific skill. I think there's like that like you're going to talk to later, like there might be like future jobs that I might want to have, so like what things would I need to be able to like be better at those kind of jobs and things like that. It's kind of like thinking in that way.
So can you give us a little bit of timeline of the pictures that we're seeing on screen so that everybody can get a little bit more acclimated to your time up till now?
Yeah, so I started college, like I said, at the University of Michigan Dearborn. While I was there, I had a number of jobs. I'm the type of person who very much so like likes to have a full schedule, and then I'm able to kind of prioritize schoolwork. But then if you give me too much free time, I won't use it to do school. So I had a number of jobs in that way. So I was an orientation leader. I did tutoring. I did kind of like teaching assistant kind of roles. and things like that, where you'd kind of host study sessions for classes. And then I also worked in a research lab for kind of biologically inspired robots. Like I said, my degree was in biomedical engineering, so it's kind of learning from nature and seeing how we can implement that in robotics. And I also did 2 internships. So at NASA Langley Research Center, doing supportability for a while, like I talked about, and then at NASA Johnson Space Center, doing the human research in that first photo on the bottom with the human research facility patch. And then also doing kind of a little bit of modeling, a little bit of hardware, a little bit of human testing at my second internship while I was there. And then going back to school. At that round, I worked at the gym on campus, and then I also worked in what was called our prototyping hub, which is mostly like 3D printing. And it was new, so we got to set it up and figure out all the fun tools that we wanted to have for all the other kind of biomedical engineering people to be able to use for all their design projects and stuff. And then I graduated from the University of Michigan, like I talked about.
Great. Let's move on to Nicole present, your current day.
Yes. So like I talked about, I'm kind of on 2 teams, supportability and the Mars architecture team. And for those, a lot of the time I'm kind of at my home center. So that's kind of the picture on the bottom left-hand corner. Having kind of a lot of meetings, a lot of kind of like also personal work time for me to be able to do analysis and like write reports and things like that. But I also get the opportunity on occasion to go to other centers. That's kind of that middle bottom picture of me and my other Mars architecture team people at Johnson Space Center. Like to take advantage of kind of learning about all the things that are happening at other centers and go on fun tours. So that was at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is the big pool where they have an entire International Space Station underwater, so they can do crew training to kind of simulate what it's like to not have gravity. And then I also am a part of the Allies and Advocates for Women Employee Resource Group. So that's like specific to NASA Langley Research Center, just trying to support kind of women and girls and encouraging them to pursue STEM and helping them with anything that they might need throughout that role, kind of at the center level.
So what we're going to do next is we're going to move on to the second session, and we're actually going to learn a lot more about Nicole. Part of what I do is I help young people in particular. We work with age 12, as young as age 12, all the way up to P20, which would be bachelor's at your graduation level of bachelor's. And what we do is we take conversations like these and we turn them into visual models to help you better understand what work is, how it works, and what it's like. I'm going to turn off my video for now while I do this full presentation. And Nicole, if you could stand by for a second, because these models are about her, and we're going to ask her a few questions as we go along the way. There we go. Sorry about that. We got stuck for a second. So what does building models for futures thinking have to do with what Nicole does? And first of all, the bigger question should be right now is, what does business models have to do with futures thinking? We are talking about business models to help you think about future work because they help you look at work in the past, the present, and the future. And the slides that you saw, or the pictures that you saw of Nicole, gave kind of a snapshot of all the things that she was doing that led up to what she is doing today. The second reason why we use these particular models is we can define work in an organization like NASA, or we can define a work role like the particular role that Nicole is in right now. through this, we use, and Nicole talked about a lot of this during her interview, we use systems thinking, we use futures thinking, we use design thinking, and we use entrepreneurial thinking. We use business models because it allows us to create a framework and boil it down into 9 specific parts in order to frame the things that we want to do in our work and life beyond school. So let's back up for a second and let me just describe to you that a business model is actually the logic by which an organization creates and delivers value to customers. So the question now becomes, what do we define in an organization as a customer? A customer, and you yourself have been customers of organizations, but they are people organizations that the business helps or serves, and these are usually external customers. The value provided is the closest thing that you're going to understand to what a purpose of an organization is. So if we think about NASA as the purpose of our organization, Nicole is speaking in terms of sending people into space. So the value is the solution to the problem that you're solving for a customer. So what's a channel? A channel is the place where your customer can find you, and also the place where you deliver your the value that you provide. So in Nicole's case, the organization that she works for is NASA, and as she said, there are other places in the world that she could work for NASA, but at this moment, she works in Hampton, Virginia. She does her work there. Customers come to see Nicole or email her or have meetings or whatever at NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. So what's a customer relationship? The customer relationship is the idea that there are different roles that organizations have to play in order to serve different customer needs. So that's how they maintain the relationship. They may interact face to face, so a customer may come to the campus of NASA, or they may simply call on the phone and the NASA picks up the phone and the customer is able to order a spaceship. This is a cyclical process. It will go round and round and round. Our next block is our key resources. And our key resources are all those things that organizations need in order to perform the actual function. So think about NASA. Some of the key resources that they're going to need is potentially astronauts or people like Nicole, engineers, or rocket ships. Key resources inform the key activities that an organization can do. All organizations are limited in the activities that they can perform in order to do a particular activity that a customer is coming to an organization for. And you can think about it this way. You cannot go to the local supermarket and buy a spaceship, but you can go to NASA and buy a spaceship. So they do specific activities. The activities are the actual tasks and actions needed for the business to create and deliver value to its customers. Finally, on this side, the last block on the top, that would be your key partners. For every organization, an organization does not make all the resources that they need in order to perform or to create and deliver value for their customer. So what they do is they have to outsource or get help from other people outside of the organization to help them gain the resources that they need in order to complete the activities. Finally, costs. In organizations, cost comes down to the money needed to acquire key resources, perform key activities, hire key partners, hire you in order to work within that organization. All in all, this is the 9 blocks of a business model. This business model is a validated and tested tool. It was developed by 2 doctors at Lucerne University in Switzerland. And you can find more about this particular tool at Strategizer. For us, however, we are going to move on to the personal side. Again, we're going to go and we're going to look at 9 building blocks, but this time we're going to use a different model, and we're going to use an earning model, and we're going to take those pictures that you see right here on the screen, and we're going to take that interview that Nicole just gave us, and we are going to drill the information down, and we're going to put it on a canvas, and we're going to just give you a high level understanding through a systems thinking look of what Nicole's roles look like across time. So just like a business model, an earning model is the logic by which you create and deliver value to your customers. So think about this as a role. When you look at the canvas that I just presented to you and the 9 blocks, what you're actually looking at and what Nicole described in her presentation, she described the people that were in her model. So she described a customer or a supervisor that she might have worked for. She described key partners or colleagues or coworkers. She described the purpose of the model. So in the purpose, she described the key resources that she brought to the role, for example, graduating from University of Michigan. She described the key activities in her current day, the top 3 to 4 key activities, because you're not hired based on every single activity in a particular role. You're hired for some main activities that create something. Again, within that purpose, there's a value proposition that each role brings. Each role, there is a reason why that role is created within an organization. And those 3 blocks help you understand the purpose of the role that you are performing. In your environment, that comes down to your channels, where and how you deliver, and that customer interaction. That environment is going to be that moment where you can say to yourself, what is that work going to be like? Because it's going to be able to tell you what things are going to happen within that environment, because you have these other purpose and understanding of the people that are also in that environment with you. And finally, potential. Reality is that not every model that you build will have a potential to work. It has to have a balance between costs and benefits in order for you to say, yes, this is the model that I want to put into action. Altogether, the model looks like this on top, and it's called an earning model. And an earning model can model your past, present, and future, and how that supports your future's thinking. When we're looking at the past, we're backcasting. We're looking at the way things were, and we're modeling a particular role in the way that it was. In the present, as you saw, or as you heard from Nicole in our interview, purposely understanding, listening to her through the interview, you have a better idea of what she has done, but what you weren't able to glean from her interview was the systems thinking behind what she does today. And then finally, taking a look at her future role, she can take her past and her present. She can take the most important information from each of those models to create a future role. So let's run through each one of these 9 blocks, because these blocks are specific to you. So let's talk about, we start with our key resources because you are the key resource in an organization. You are important to your model, to your earning model. So your key resources are who you are and what you have, your skills, your abilities, personality, intangible and tangible assets. So what I mean by that is maybe you are going to explore a role where it requires you to own a car. That would be an asset that you could say, oh yes, if I looked at a job description and it said, do you own a car? I could say, yes, that is a key resource that I have in order to think about this model being worthwhile for me to explore. Next, the activities. As we said before, when we look at key resources, we need to understand which key resources inform the activities that we will do. Again, the same as a business model. The key activities are the actual tasks and actions you provide, the solution or satisfaction you perform to create and deliver value. Again, our model also has key partners who helps you. So these are the people who are helping you provide something that you don't have, a resource, or they're performing an activity needed to accomplish your work. So you can think about your coworkers or mentors or people outside of the organization that might provide something that Nicole does not have within her own toolbox. Again, we come back to our value provided. This is your purpose. This is the reason why you've taken that role. This is why you want to help people get things done. So this is the value provided is how you help. It's a solution or the problem that you're solving for a customer. Again, we go to channels. We have how you deliver and where you deliver. Channel is where you're going to go to work during the day, or where that specific item that you're creating is being sold. So a good example of different channels. Perhaps you are a creator and you post your work on an artist site like Etsy is a good example. That's a channel. In Nicole's case, she goes to the NASA complex. That's her channel. Sometimes she goes face-to-face, sometimes she might not work there face-to-face, but overall, she goes to that particular place to deliver her work. Again, here we are back at customers, because you cannot have a model without the person you're going to help, or the people that you're going to help, or the organization that you're going to help. So the customers are the people you serve. This could be an internal boss, which is typically your very first customer. Most of us will not be dealing with a customer outside of the organization, an external customer. But sometimes it's just the person you directly work for. This person might also be called your supervisor or some other hierarchical naming that you have for your customer. Again, you have a customer interaction. Nicole, she delivers her work through NASA. She talks to her supervisor, immediate supervisor. She interacts with her immediate supervisor in a particular way. It might be face-to-face. It might be by a Teams meeting. It might be an email. But the point is that in order to get her work to her customer, she has to have a constant interaction, and that is served in the customer relationships. Again, it's a cycle that goes on and on. So then a difference between there are actually two differences, and I'll go into the next one in a moment, but the two differences between a business model and a personal model, one that is driven towards role description, one that is helps you diagram your job. Instead of revenue, we call it benefits. And the reason why we call it benefits is because on every single model, we assume that there is money already. You're being paid for the work that you do. But actually, there's other things that you get when you take a role. It might be you work from home. It might be an exhilarating job that it was your dream job and you really wanted to work there. It might be that they have a certain benefit that they give as a part of that employment. So understanding the benefits that come with a particular job role is very important. On the other side of it, instead of costs, because we work for an organization and in our model, we call it investments. And on all our models, we always include time. Time is an investment on every model. But there might be other investments that you make. So if we think about Nicole as, for example, she's a perfect example of why investments are listed. She, as you know, from her story, she talked about the idea that she went on to be an intern. She was an intern, and then following her graduation, she then came on to work for NASA. But the investment that she made was that she had to do all this extensive learning in order to be a part of NASA. And that wasn't just her time. That is what she had to do in order to build key resources to be able to perform the key activities. So the method that we use to help students do future thinking is called the earning model into action method. And it uses 4 actions: model, adjust, test, and do. On the outer ring of that method, you'll see collect resources, act on models, and spot opportunities. Those are entrepreneurial thinking frames that we ask you to look at in every model that you create. So the first action you do is you build a model. The second action you do is you adjust the model to the way that you would like your future to be. So we talked about this idea that we had some design thinking in the beginning. We kind of step back and we put out into the world all the different possibilities. And then we go out and we test those possibilities. So our testing could take the form of, I'm going to do an internship after I built a model that I think would be really important to me. And then if I decide that that model is not important, I adjust it. I come back and I say, nope, I didn't like that. Maybe I didn't like that role. Maybe I didn't like that organization. Maybe there was a skill or a resource that I no longer want to develop, but it allows you to go forward and adjust your model. The next thing you do is you put it in action. Once you find a test that or a model that is fully validated, you then say that this is the one that I'm going to act on, and I'm going to develop those skills and resources. So we're back to Nicole, and we're going to talk about a role that she held back in when she was at the University of Michigan. So this is a blank earning model. And we are going to start with the box that Nicole has for how she was able to look at this role. Nicole, I have one question to ask you about this particular role.
Yeah.
So of all the roles that you could have taken when you were in college, what was it about this one that you said, oh, I think I want to do that?
To be fair to myself, I took a lot. So I wasn't so much like the selectiveness so much as that I like different aspects of a lot of different jobs. So I wanted to do a lot of them. I would say from an orientation leader perspective, I like meeting new people. I liked that I had a number of friends who were orientation leaders the year before me that had a really good experience. So I wanted to do that. And I'd say like hindsight, definitely just the ability to talk to new people that you don't really know that well and to be able to have a conversation is definitely kind of a benefit that came out of it.
So the reason why I asked Nicole that question is because we want to see that some of the things when you're listening for during an interview, you want to see some of those things show up on your model. So when I think about the very first thing, we said that Nicole in her key resource, and the reason why she could do this role is because the role was at University of Michigan. And so at the time, she was a student at the University of Michigan. She had knowledge of the campus environment. She had interpersonal communication skills, which you can tell already because here she is. She's giving us she's participating in this event. She has a willingness to learn, as you can tell, because she's here. Obviously, she has organizational skills, and this informed the key activities of the orientation leader. So as an orientation leader, she was to provide tours to the university, introduce new students to the university, lead orientation groups. If you were looking at that job as a posting online, that is the way that you should be seeing a particular role posted, but you don't see it that way. What you see is usually a list of 100 things. What we're doing is we're helping people like Nicole come in and look at different roles and understand what is the most important thing that is going to help a customer. So in this particular case, we're actually going to talk about this particular model with Nicole because she is unique. In every one of her models, she's had 2 customers. In this particular model, she had a customer called the students that she helped, which the part that she did with her activities was create an enjoyable transition by fostering a welcoming environment that helps new students develop a sense of home and community. So it was making them feel great. The second customer that she had was a boss. The boss needed to ensure that the students that were coming to the campus were happy and they're feeling good. Where was she doing this? She was doing this at the U of M campus. How was she interacting with both of these customers that she had? By phone calls and face-to-face. Who helped her? Her fellow orientation leaders. She had mentors at school. And what did she give? We know she gave time because she also had a full load. She talked about how she was a little bit unsure of her path. So we know that she had very varying classes. And as the point to this particular model was that it took time away from studying. Now, what did she get? She got money because you know that she definitely, on every model that we said, we were going to have time and money. But what did she translate the benefits of this role into? An opportunity to meet new people. I think she said that when she started on the orientation leader. She wanted to pay for her school supplies, provide enthusiasm and kindness to fellow students, which she did, and then learn about more about the university. So this is an example of a model that we would do, and this is a model that starts Nicole's journey to NASA. So here we are in present. So we talked about this idea that Nicole had some jobs and internships between her present model between her past model and her present model. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to take this orientation role, and we wanted to show you what that would look like in present day. So we are going to use some of the skills that she had in her last model. So she has organization skills, willingness to learn, interpersonal communication. In this current role, we're calling her at NASA, a space systems analyst. In this particular model, we are also going to preload our time and money so that we can offload that already. We're going to go back to the key resources. And notice the color is going to be orange because the rest of the model is basically empty. So the only things we brought from the other model that we said, okay, we can have as a launch pad are these 3 key resources. As a system space analyst, she says that here are her key resources today with the things that she does in order to do her activities. Systems analyst experience. She has a biomedical engineering degree. She has technical content. She has NASA internship experience. She has technical writing. And what does she do? She integrates across teams, as we talked about that. She has a mentor who helps her do her work, or she mentors others. excuse me on that. Sorry, Nicole. She said earlier she analyzes risks versus resource trades for future human exploration. She analyzes approaches for how we go to Mars. She has two sets of customers. As I said, we have an external customer, inform decision makers by providing analysis to understand how one change in the architecture impacts others, and her team leads. So she, for this particular model, we're just going to use team lead, but that is her supervisor within NASA. And she informs the decision makers by showing cost versus benefit analysis. She does this at NASA, but here is how she maintains all these customer relationships. She does it by face-to-face, Teams messaging, hybrid meetings, virtual meetings, email. So you can kind of get an idea of what her environment is looking like. Who helps her in this role? Her mentors, the branch leadership, coworkers. What did she give? She said she was from Detroit in the beginning. She moved away from her family. What does she get? Opportunity to advance the future of human spaceflight, work I'm passionate about, an ambassador to other young people, and encourage others to pursue what they are passionate about. So you can see from this model that her past is certainly integrated into it. So when you think about futures thinking, you always have to do a backcasting look in order to move forward. So let's see where we're going to next. Let's see the future that Nicole built. So what I want you to notice is there's a lot of orange and blue and green existent in this model. It's because when you're going into the future, not every piece of innovation will change. Some of that innovation will improve. Some will stay the same. For example, in Nicole's new role, her NASA team lead role, so she wants to move up in NASA, she is going to take her systems experience, her biomedical engineering, her technical content, her NASA experience, or internship experience, her technical writing, her organization skills, willingness to learn, interpersonal communication. But she knows that there's something else that she's going to need. She's going to need leadership skills. So she's going to work for that for the future. She's going to need leadership training. She's going to need integration experience and experience as a team member. And what is that going to make her? What are the activities that she's going to do as a team lead? Now she's going to be the one that says, these are the high value work. She's going to prioritize it. She's going to perform the analysis. She's going to manage and lead the team. Who's she going to do this for? Obviously, we said she was going to have internal and external customers. She's going to do it for an external customer. The value proposition for the external customer is going to be, she's going to provide safe space travel. Internal customer, her branch leadership, communicate high value space work. Who is she going to do this with? She's still going to do it with her coworkers, but now her team leads are going to be her key partners, because she's also going to be a team lead. And she's also going to maintain her mentors. What is she's given up by going on to this next future role? Less time to work on more technical projects. Now, Nicole is one of the rare people in the world that I can say that I have never met somebody who is so kind-hearted. And so what you get, what I'm passionate about, opportunity to advance future of human spaceflight, support my work interest outside, to be an ambassador to young people, that has not changed in any of her models. She still wants to do that. But I think this is one of the most relatable models I have ever built with somebody. She wants to get a dog when she becomes a team lead. So I say that all to say that this is what a future role would look like and how the future is shaped using models. So Nicole, I'm going to ask you, what are some parting thoughts that you would have about the future of work in space? What tips and tricks can you give to other people who are thinking about the same kind of trajectory?
Yeah, I guess just in general to be aware that to do things in space, you don't have to be any one thing. Space requires everybody to do everything that we do here on Earth. You need the business people to figure out how we can pay for how we get to space. You need the communications people to make sure we're effectively communicating what we're doing with the public. You need the food science people to make the food so that the astronauts can eat in space. And then you need the engineers to build kind of more of the hardware type systems and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different roles, a lot of different things. There are astronaut, like exercise trainers, astronaut doctors. I could go on. But there's a number of different options, and it's not just engineering and it's not just STEM. It goes a lot broader than that. So I guess that would be my number one. Number two, do what you're passionate about, whatever it is. If it's space, awesome. Me too. If it's not, cool. But as long like when you find that thing, just like fundamentally pursue that. And I guess just in general, don't worry about finding that one thing. It's okay to find a lot of things cool. It's okay to be passionate about a number of things. You don't have to whittle it down to just one thing. There's a lot of ways that kind of like going through careers to like find different kind of two different things that you can do that can combine like both things that you love, and be able to go from there. So I guess that would be kind of my main advice. And I think my internship experience really helped me to be able to see what an actual position looks like, what like working in the real world looks like. So I highly encourage any opportunity anyone gets to be able to kind of do those things, be able to shadow in the roles you want to work in, volunteer, intern, and kind of just gain those experiences so you can better understand if that's kind of the people that you want to look like in the future, or if you want to do a role that's different to that, just to be able to try it before kind of committing fully.
Thank you, Nicole. If anybody has any last minute questions, we are just about 5 minutes out.
I guess I saw one in the chat earlier about how many students did I see in my orientation leader role. I think it was around like 10-ish students per group, and it was like a full day of being with those 10-ish students. And I think we had around 10 orientations throughout the summer. So something like that. But then we also had like larger events that were like, hey, welcome to the university. Let's talk about it in general, where it was more, we were just there to kind of like help facilitate, not necessarily give any overviews or anything. And that was kind of more frequent, like rotations of small groups of like much larger sizes, but much smaller tours and stuff like that. So kind of an array, but the main portion was those summer 10 student-ish sessions.
We also had what specifically in your current role is your absolute favorite part of your job?
Jeez, I don't know if it's like any specific thing so much as like I just get to do cool stuff. Mars is cool. Thinking about how we're gonna have humans on Mars one day is really cool. And kind of getting to work towards that and look at all the different ways that we could possibly do that and trying to kind of make that future a reality is just really exciting. So I have fun with that.
Sorry, I'm going through scrolling through.
Yeah, I saw the most recent one that's asked why I chose NASA Langley. That was a hard decision. Kind of two of my main hard decisions when coming time for full time was whether or not I went to grad school versus came to NASA full time, and then what NASA center I was going to. So I got some really good advice that you're never making a decision for the rest of your life. You're making a decision for the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that really helped me kind of like rein back in my anxiety of this like massive decision about adulting, to know that there are so many options for the future. And like, quite honestly, like you can change your mind and do something completely different. But it's worth just giving it a shot. And as for NASA Langley, kind of my branch has a really great culture, that like we have branch game nights, we have weekly lunches. Like I know it sounds super cliche, but like it really does feel like family in that way. Oh, that sounds so cliche, but it's true. So I just really, really like the people I get to work with, and I really like the type of work I get to work on.
You know, one of the questions that I didn't ask you was, you have your biomedical engineering degree. For your next role, do you foresee that you have to go back to school? And if not, do you plan on going back to school? I mean, what is your next educational track, if any?
Yeah, so most people around me are aerospace engineers, just for context. So I wouldn't say that I used my degree necessarily. I would say my degree helps in the fact that like I learned how to learn. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop there. So like that was kind of that, and the fact that it was an engineering degree enabled me to be able to apply for the position that I want. Quite honestly, beyond that, like it's not necessarily the technical. I'm more interested in say like humans and how humans exist in space rather than like the rocket ship itself. And I kind of like pushed to be more in those conversations, but I think I could have been in them if I was an aerospace engineer and just had that interest as well. As for kind of like promotion potential and stuff like that, I don't necessarily think I need to go to grad school personally. I might, but as of right now, with like my interest towards more of the human side, I don't necessarily know what grad school would be most beneficial for what I want to be and like my specific interests within my space. So yeah, it's still on the table. It's not off the table, but as of now, I don't have any current plans.
Thank you, Nicole, for all your insightful help and work and taking the time to join us on World Futures Day. If anybody would like a certificate of participation, please fill out the survey and share a quote with us for your experience, from your experience and the survey link. Please stay for the next session that's coming up in 2 minutes. I appreciate all the time that all of you took to listen to our work with Learner to Earner and how we work with young people like Nicole.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are reaching the end of this session.